Hi, everyone, and welcome to Deep Geek Live. I am delighted and honored to have my guest on today, who is the one and only Sir Hunt's Reviews. Mark, do you want to say hi?
What's up, everybody? How are you doing? Thanks for having me on, Robert. You can find me over on youtube.com/Sir Hunt's Reviews.
And your hair is looking lovely as always, it has to be said. So, guys, today we are looking at probably one of the most disliked characters, let's say that, in Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. I struggle to find a single person who has a single good thing to say about Robert Baratheon. So we're going to look through this from the beginning all the way through to his death. Is there anything good to say about Robert Baratheon? Now, guys, as always, I want to keep this as interactive as possible. If there are any super chats, and Stephen Stark, thank you so much. I saw there was one just before we started. That was very kind. Thank you. If there are any super chats, we'll come to you straight away. I've got some questions already from my patrons. My patrons will always have priority. And obviously, also there with the moderators, if you've got any questions, just let me know. But let's start off thinking about Robert Baratheon, thinking about his early years. Where do you start with this, Mark? Have we got Robert Baratheon wrong, or is he just a complete arse?
I mean, I disagree with him being one of the most hated, but I definitely agree with the fact that he's, not. I guess we misunderstood, to put it lightly. I mean, he's kind of the cause for a lot of the turmoil and strife that's going on in our story. I mean, I guess to start, we could start by, his background in growing up with Ned and Lyanna, and, I guess kind of from there. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed Mark Addy's portrayal of him on the TV show. Definitely classic. Every single line that he says is a meme. Like, I don't know, it's perfect. The voice that he does for that, everything about it. I loved his character. But yes, he's definitely a giant ass.
Okay, so that's where we're starting. We're starting with the idea that he's a giant ass. Now, I would agree. Let's put this to one side. Mark Addy does a really good job, and let's just accept the fact that he inhabits that character in a way that allows us to understand him in a really, really visceral way. So props to Mark Addy. That said, let's go back to the beginning. Before all of the show, before all of the books, we have young Robert Baratheon. Now, we hear about Robert's rebellion. Mark, what's your take on him as a young man? Before all of this, before he was king, before the rebellion, what's your take on what he was like then? You've got mute on, mate.
Sorry about that. Did you guys hear anything that I said? Sorry. No, I was just saying. And we don't get much of him on the television show. I mean, we do kind of get when him and Ned are reminiscing about how it's like when they were younger. I think for the most part, he was just known as like a great warrior, and he's extremely charismatic. I think what sort of caused him into becoming this, and you can almost argue that it's he can relate to Stannis on this. It's not like when he was growing up, he thought he was going to be king. He knew he was of House Baratheon, and the highest that he could reach is like Lord of the Stormlands. So the fact that, the Mad King Aerys did all of this negative shit, I think kind of forced Robert into becoming, this unwanted. Obviously, he didn't want it. You could tell the way that he turned out, an alcoholic, sleeping on his wife, basically having Jon Arryn take care of the entirety of the dealings of Westeros while he was king. So clearly he didn't want that. But I think, for the most part, when he was younger, he was like a straightforward guy. You know what I mean? I'm sure he was a bit of an asshole, but everybody was back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to go straight to one of my patrons' questions. Pegleg Pete. Hi, Pete, if you're out there, saying, please go over Robert's early days growing up. All I really know is, as a TV watcher, that he and Ned apprenticed under John Arryn, and he seemed to be more of a party animal than a thinking leader. So, I mean, I'll start on this one. And then Mark, perhaps you want to pick up in a moment. So, yeah, so he started out, we have to remember he's an entitled noble, and that's where he's at. He grew up knowing that he was going to inherit one of the great houses, House Baratheon, and that was where he was going to be. So he grew up with that understanding, and then he and Ned went to the Eyrie, which is quite a cut-off place. It's where I'm at currently with my Traveller's Guide to Westeros, if you're interested. It's quite a cut-off place. And the two of them bonded, and John Arryn actually seems to have been quite a wise old man, seems to have been the kind of person to sort of bring them up well as a sort of a second father to both of them. Now, at that point, we shouldn't disassociate Robert from the man that he became, because then already he got a bastard child. It appears in the books. It didn't appear in the show, but in the books, it's very clear he got a bastard child at that point already. So already he was the kind of guy who was going to be sleeping around. Now, at some point soon after that, he went back to Storm's End, which is where House Baratheon were based. And there's this bit that's never really explained in the show, but I think was probably quite an important moment for him, where King Aerys II, the Mad King, sent Robert Baratheon's father over to Essos, to Volantis, to try and find a bride for Rhaegar. Now, that was a failed mission. Steffon Baratheon, Robert's father, came back unsuccessful. And as the boat was coming in, they could just about see it. A storm hit, and the boat went down, and Robert Baratheon saw his father die at sea, and he inherited the leadership of House Baratheon. So that is the background to where it was. So when Robert's rebellion started, he was a suddenly new head of his house, which has to be quite a big thing for him. He watched his father die, which again is the kind of thing that we probably can't understand the impact that would have on you, but he had to grow up quite quickly, and I suspect there were quite a lot of emotions that were buried down inside him because of it. So, Mark, do you think that any of this can kind of explain or excuse the anger that was clearly there as a young man?
Well, I mean, it is, it can, but then again, every character in this story has had some sort of traumatic upbringing. Arya and Sansa actually watched their father's head chopped off. So, like, we get this description that, yes, he watched his father drown, but obviously it wasn't to the point where he could see him and he's going up. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's traumatic for sure. And then you also have the Mad King doing all this negative shit to Ned, who was basically his brother, because, like you said, they grew up together. So it is an excuse, but then not really. You know what I mean? Because it's almost like when you're given that kind of, like, when you're basically shit on like that, when you have that kind of plate handed to you, what you decide to do after that point defines the kind of character that you are. And it's like, yeah, he thought about it like, okay, let's go take out the Mad King. This rulership is stupid. But if he had really been paying attention, he would have known that Rhaegar was actually the best choice, because Rhaegar was groomed his entire life to sit the Iron Throne, and he wasn't as cruel as his father. He did steal his bride, but it was almost like Lyanna was not in love with Robert. Robert had to know that. You know what I mean? It's almost like it does a little bit. So you feel sympathy for him, but then in the long run, it's like he got almost everything he wanted aside from Lyanna, but he would have cheated on her anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just feel like he's kind of like he's almost like a nincompoop. You know what I mean? I don't know. Just tried to throw in some British phrasery there.
It's a great word. We use that almost all the time. It has to be said. So, So let's move on then to the start of Robert's Rebellion. And we call it Robert's Rebellion. In a moment, I'm going to say why I don't think it probably should be called Robert's Rebellion. But do you think... actually, no, I'll start that one again. So Rickard Stark, who was Ned's father, set up Lyanna and Robert as like a marriage partner. This was one of the things that he was doing, is trying to set up this great alliance between a few of the great houses, and he set up Lyanna and Robert. Now, Robert, as far as we can understand, became infatuated with Lyanna. Do you think he actually loved her, or do you think it was just some kind of infatuation going on?
No, definitely infatuation. I've been in that that sort of situation in my life before, where it's like, I'm a kid growing up. I'm like, oh man, I fucking love this girl. I love her so much. And then come to find out, like, not really. I just was almost obsessed with the idea of loving her than I actually did love her. You know what I mean? So that's what it was with Robert. You can't actually love another person unless they love you in return. So it's probably he's like, oh, I'm promised this sexy northern chick, I'm gonna get it, and then he doesn't. So then he's like, oh man, I gotta throw this giant temper tantrum. And I'm saying all this as though you would think I hate Robert Bratt. I don't. I thoroughly enjoy him on the TV show. This is like obviously he's at fault for a lot of this stuff. I mean, you can also blame Littlefinger. So I don't know, getting sidetracked here, but yeah, I definitely don't think he actually loved her. He loved the idea of loving her. So yeah, 100% infatuation.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree. I think he did love her, but it was an infatuation of love rather than a two-way thing. Let's put it that way. It was not a two-way thing. So I've got another question from one of my patrons, John St. Baptiste. I see you there in the chat. Great to see you guys. Please do check out John St. Baptiste's channel if you like music. He's got a great music channel, not just like bringing music together, but lots of thought about music, lots of consideration about what makes good music, what brings us together around music. So please do go and check out his channel. His question is, when it comes to Rhaegon, Lyanna, and Robert, there are three possibilities about where Robert was at. Firstly, he lied to himself, and he believed that this was just like, as we heard it to start with, that Rhaegar abducted Lyanna. Secondly, that he knows it was a lie and he just wanted war. Or thirdly, he was just like this kind of really stupid dupe of all these lords who wanted to have war. What do you think it was? What do you think was really going on there out of those options? And you're still on mute.
Awesome. I would have to say, I mean, you're basically saying like what caused this? Like what?
Pretty much. Okay.
I mean, I think the fact that it's mentioned of how he was as a youth, like he's a great warrior, I think it could have been a little bit, tied into that. I was reading the chat. Someone tagged me, so.
That's cool. If you got a good chat question, go with that one.
No. I was just saying that's why I was distracted on that answer. I gave kind of like a half-assed answer because I was reading. Someone had tagged me and it like highlighted. But
well, okay, let's go with this one. Like, why do you think that he launched the rebellion? So obviously, like the actual trigger was that Aerys II said to Jon Arryn, I want the heads of Ned Stark and Robert Baratheon. And Jon Arryn said no. And at that point, Ned went up and rallied the banners, and Robert went off and rallied the banners. But what do you think it was that made Robert actually go with that?
Well, I mean, like you had mentioned it, he was infatuated with this girl that was promised to him. So he's like, I'm not only going to take what's mine, but also you've taken the life of my brother's father. You've done all this. You're causing this sort of, you're known as the Mad King. You know what I mean? So there's a number of different reasons, but I think for the main part, how Robert's portrayed, on the TV show and in the books is he's like this drunken old fat bastard. So it's almost like, why would we expect him to be any different 20 years ago? You know what I mean? Maybe in better shape and in more fighting capability, but ultimate mind is still the same. You know what I mean? I think it would be really interesting to see what would have happened if Robert outlived. Well, I guess that wouldn't work because he wouldn't have allowed Ned to get beheaded. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think would have happened if Robert died during his rebellion? Do you think Ned would have sat the Iron Throne? Ooh, switched it on there.
I mean, yeah, so throw me that awkward question. I think no is the answer. I think that Ned did not want the throne. And I think that realistically, there were three options at the end of that war. Once they got rid of the Targaryens, and that was the main aim of this, once they got rid of the Targaryens, there were three options. Option number one was Jon Arryn. Jon Arryn did not want to be king. It was quite clear. He could have done, because they would have probably stepped back and said, okay, you're the elder here. He did not want to be king. Option number two was Ned. Ned also did not want to be king. He wanted to find Lyanna. That was his objective. He was going, where's my sister gone? Option number three was Robert Baratheon. Now, if Robert Baratheon was not there, I think we're going to go straight into this discussion that we had actually on the TV show about who's his heir, Stannis. So all the people who were saying Stannis the Manus, Stannis is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. Actually, if Robert had died, as he nearly did in battle, the Battle of the Trident, Stannis would have been next in line, because the excuse they used to get House Baratheon onto the Iron Throne was because they were actually related to the Targaryens. Now, they could have used any excuse, but that was the excuse they used. And I think, personally, it would have just been about who was still standing when the others said, no, I don't want it. And I think the person left standing would have been Stannis, who's only a year or so younger than Robert Baratheon.
Yeah, did you see in the chat there's a bunch of Stannis supporters going ham on support? Yeah, he is the rightful heir. I mean, he really is. There's no other way. Ned supported him, so I don't know. I'll support his claim too. I think the main difference in why there's so many Stannis stands, like Eminem's song Stan, why there's so many of them is because he wasn't done justice on Game of Thrones. He was not. I think Dan and Dave interpreted him, and this has been said before, that he's a religious zealot. He's in a cult, basically. You know what I mean? They're burning people alive. So that this is how we're going to portray him on screen. I don't think that he's ever going to be okay with burning Shireen. I don't know. Speaking of which, I got a picture with her at Con of Thrones. Pretty awesome. But yeah, no, I think more so that it's it would have been interesting if Stannis had taken the Iron Throne. So.
Yeah, I think it would have been very different. And I think that's the thing I want to move on to in the second half of this live stream, is about what life was like with Robert as king. Was he actually a good king? But I just want to pick up on a couple of things. Klaus Richter, thank you so much. I saw your super chat there. I want to pick up on that in the second half, if that's okay. Please remind me if I don't pick up on that one. But I want to pick up on that one in the second half, asking you about why Robert didn't notice about his children. So to sort of round off this first half before he was king, the one thing that we often don't recognize is the fact that when we think of him, we think of this Mark Addy characterization of him, which is right for the Robert Baratheon we see. But when he was a younger man, he was stones lighter. He was 8 stone lighter, a lot 100 pounds lighter or whatever. He was a lot thinner. He was a lot more muscular. He was a really, really good fighter. He was, for those who study medieval history, it's the equivalent of the Henry VIII of Westeros, is that when he was a younger man, he actually was winning tournaments because he was a strong and good fighter. And it was only later that he put on weight and he became this slightly bloated drunkard who couldn't actually do all the things that he wanted to do. When he was a younger man, he was actually a fine figure of a man. So that's the person that we need to be thinking about when we're thinking about the younger Robert Baratheon. Is there anything before we get on to the second half of the story, the Robert Baratheon as king? Is there anything, Mark, you want to add about the younger Robert Baratheon and why he launched this?
Yes, I do. But before that, you mentioned King Henry VIII. This is the Tudor one, right? Like the one that was obsessed with his calves, that wore like this thing that embellished his calves because he wanted them to look so muscular. It is actually part of the reason that killed him, is because he got blood clot. That's crazy. So I like that, man. That's Robert all the way. Something as vain as that, like the breastplate stretcher. But yeah, sorry. Just I think just like every other character in this story, he has a conflicted past, and that then shapes him into this tormented adult, if you will, someone who drinks away the pain all day. You know what I mean? The pain of losing his betrothed, the pain of realizing that, being the king isn't all it's cracked up to be. I think you could argue that most people that suffer that suffer with addiction, that abuse drugs and alcohol like that, they have some inner strife and some inner turmoil that never worked through all the way. So I think that can definitely be attributed to why Robert is the way that he is and why he did the things he did.
Yeah, absolutely. So he was, and I'll try and find the quote. Someone out there in the chat had a great quote about something that Robert Baratheon said to Ned Stark. Vanessa Amnesty said, "I swear to you, I was never so alive as when I was winning this throne. Dead as now, also dead as now that I've won it," which is what he said to Eddard Stark. So when he was winning it, when he was younger, that was when he felt alive. That was what he was about. The bit that we'll come onto in a moment is this second bit when he felt dead. That was not where his strengths were. His strengths were about winning the throne. And incidentally, and perhaps this is on this last bit that we'll look at the pre-king Robert Baratheon. I know, Mark, you're very focused on focus is perhaps the wrong word, Daenerys Targaryen and her claim to the throne. She is a conqueror, not a ruler, or so says Dario. Do you see any kind of similarities between her and Robert Baratheon, who was also a conqueror and not a very good ruler, perhaps?
The only thing similar between King Robert Baratheon, first of his name, drunkard of the Andals, and Daenerys, mother of dragons, Khaleesi Targaryen, Stormbreaker, is that they are Targaryen. That's the only thing similar, is that Daenerys is a Targaryen and Robert has Targaryen roots through his grandmother. That's the only, the conquest, I guess, the reasoning behind the conquest and being justified somewhat. I honestly think that, like I said, if Robert had paid more freaking attention to his surroundings, he would have known that, at the tourney in Harrenhal, Rhaegar was planning on doing something to rid his father of the throne. So if you just pay more attention to your surroundings, and obviously you could argue that the Mad King escalated that by doing what he did to Rickard Stark. But I don't really see it. I guess Daenerys, her whole thing is like, she was born into this. She doesn't really have a choice in doing what she's doing. You're saying Dario said she was a conqueror. I think at one point in her journey, she thought she was too, but now she's clearly not. She's dropped all pursuit of the Iron Throne to go and help this Northern Short kid, this Northern Short guy with a tiny penis, to go and help him because she knows that what his goal is the right thing to do, is to save this kingdom. So not only is she willing to put aside her quest for the Iron Throne, but she's also willing to save the entirety of the kingdom. Do you think Robert Baratheon would have been like, "Hey, yo, hold up, I'm going to have to stop drinking wine"? Like, if he was still alive, you know what I'm saying? Do you think he would have been like, "Okay, I'm going to go send troops"? No, he would have tried to kill Daenerys. He would have destroyed all of the, he would have done the same thing that Cersei's doing. I think the problem is just like when you become a celebrity or when you do whatever, and you're not used to that your whole life, it's almost like you're given new money. You do all these ridiculous things with it because you're not used to that. Robert and well, I guess you could argue Cersei, whatever. Lannisters are the richest house, but Robert was not used to that. So then he was giving it to him, and he kind of earned it. But you could argue that every single person around him helped him do it. So he killed Rhaegar, which was arguably the greatest hope the kingdom had at that time. He killed Rhaegar. Everyone else did the main part of conquering the throne. Tywin took King's Landing. He had nothing to do with that. So really, he was just given this role of the king. If you did, like, yeah, he was a warrior, whatever, man. But everybody else altogether, when you add up their deeds, they made his look like he did nothing but just be born into this position to do this. You know what I mean? And that's why he's such a shitty ruler. And that's why he has Jon Arryn, someone who knows about the kingdom, someone who knows the way and the workings of Westeros. That's why, he allowed them to, I don't know. I've gone on for too long.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I'm going to push you back on this one a little bit. But first of all, Stephen Stark, thank you very much for your super chat. Tell us you are going to Con of Thrones. Do it. I commit to coming to Con of Thrones 2019, wherever it is, I will be there. That's my commitment to you. So there you go. Are you going to be there, Mark?
Yes. Undoubtedly. My whole thing is will it be coming on? Because here's the thing: if Con of Thrones is going to be right before season 7 start, or right before season 8 starts, or right in between it, or right at the end of it, I'm not going to do it. I can't. My brain is going to be all over the place, and it's not going to be at the con. Now, if Emilia Clarke or maybe Kit Harington or someone major goes there, then yes. But if it correlates in any time close to before or after season 8, I can't do it. I have a service just like you do. We have to provide, people need us, man. They need us, especially during season. So I don't know. It's going to be close. Last year it was easy because it was like a month, or like it ended like 2 weeks before season 7 premiered. So I don't know. It worked out better. And then this year we don't even have Game of Thrones. So it worked out, but I don't know. Most likely, yes. If it somehow correlates with the ending or the beginning of the show, I can't do it. I'm not going to be able to. I'll be there in spirit, though.
Yeah, so I have to say that my commitment is to my channel first and foremost, and so I will definitely be providing the videos with that. I am convinced that Con of Thrones will not be crossing over with season 8 of Game of Thrones, and that's where I am. And if that's the case, I'm definitely going to be there. But I want to put something to you, getting back to this idea of Robert Baratheon and Daenerys. So Daenerys has been not from birth, but from season 1, from the book 1, the hatching of her dragons, she has been trying to get the Iron Throne. Can I put to you the idea that Robert Baratheon was never trying to get the Iron Throne? He was never actually pushing. It was never about personal ambition. It was never about him. It was actually about the fact that he had to follow up the idea that he felt that a great wrong was done. Something really bad he felt had happened. Not just the abduction and he felt rape of his betrothed, but also, let's face it, the horrific murder of the father and brother of his best friend. And so he was actually trying to right a great wrong in a way that Daenerys is just trying to get power for herself. So can I put that to you, that Robert Baratheon was not actually trying to gather power for himself? He was actually trying to right some kind of wrong.
I mean, yeah, you can look at anything from any angle and argue any point to it, but the main thing is like, he did what he did. Like, the choices that he made are not of someone who's just doing it just because they feel like they need to. They have to, because of, like you said, his best friend's father and brother were burned alive in the Capitol, and the king clearly knew that he was wrong when he was doing it. And like, Lyanna, according to him, was raped. I guess you could say, according to Littlefinger, was raped. It doesn't matter. You can look at it from any angle and say yes, but what did he ultimately do? You know what I'm saying? He made it possible for the War of the Five Kings to open up. You know what I mean? For something like that. I think if you want to argue that point, well, then you also have to add in the fact that he had to be somewhat aware that Rhaegar was going. He's known, you know what I mean? Like, you hear about him. There's no way you don't hear that this guy's a fucking poet. He's not a warrior. He's nothing like his father. Pay attention, Robert. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, dude. Like, I don't know. I can't. You can, of course, if you look at it from that point that you just made. Like, yes, you know, Ned lost his sister, his brother, his father, all of that. And then, you know, Robert, and like, yeah, for sure. But ultimately, no, I think the main thing with Daenerys is, like, you're saying she's just trying to get power. No, I think she was abused by her brother her entire life, and he's a fucking dickhead, the beggar king. Excuse my language. I didn't mean to say that. He's not the best person. So, and then you have her being, I guess the show made it different than what it was in the books. She doesn't actually get raped, but from what it's almost like, if you want to argue that Stannis was like, oh, I didn't ask for this, I was just born into it. Same with Daenerys. And not only is she told her whole life by her brother that her family was crapped on, but she's hearing that one side. So, you know, of course, in the beginning, she's going to be about vengeance and fire and blood. But what does it come down to? Because she literally has the opportunity 3 different times last season. As soon as she got to Dragonstone, she literally could have taken the ships, burned all of King's Landing to the mother ground, and then done what, but she didn't do that. She didn't. She went and she waited, and she made a plan. She reached out with Jon. Jon told her, look, there's a greater threat than the Iron Throne. And then she went north with them, lost the dragon, and then came back to the dragon pit, met with this crazy woman who, you know, she knows how her father was. She knows this woman is no better than her father, and she still holds it all under resolve because she knows that she has to go and save Westeros. Robert is not that same type of person. Robert wouldn't do that. If anything, Robert would have been like, you know, well, they're not down here. He would have been just like how Cersei was. I don't know. It could just be, like you said, it could just be my infatuation with Daenerys. I don't know. I can defend her like
those were your words, but I will go with it. So, guys, we'll take it. Just a very brief pause. I do this every single time. I just want to take a moment to say thank you to my patrons. I cannot do this without you and your support, so I want to say thank you. This month coming up, patrons, there will be an extra bonus bit of audio for you that will be coming up. I know I'm already producing all of the well-told tales. They're coming to all of my $5 and above patrons in Deep Geek. I've set up a separate Patreon account, incidentally, for the well-told tale. And the other thing I just want to say about the well-told tale, which is my second channel, we're now about halfway through the first story, and I have been blown over by the support. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. The War of the Worlds is one of my favorite stories, and I'm so loving the fact that you guys love it as well. It's something that is quite close to my heart. It's set in an area that I grew up in, and so I love the way that it works as one of the original pieces of science fiction that we have here, that everything is based out of. So I love that. So anyway, patrons, thank you. If you want to be a patron of Deep Geek, then please do check out the link. Somebody, I'm sure, will put the link down there in the chat. It's down in the description. Being a patron of Deep Geek is about supporting the channel. It's also about getting access to more audio content. So please do consider that. And also, I want to just ask you to consider my guest today, Mark Sahunts, who has, I know, a great channel, but he's also just set up a GoFundMe page to help him get better audio equipment, to help him deliver better content for everyone. So, Mark, is there anything else you want to just like bring to people's attention?
I keep doing that. I keep muting it. Sorry. Yeah, thanks, man. That was awesome. Nice. Yeah. So yeah, it's basically like I have a GoFundMe set up for, you know, just to bring higher quality content and make it so that I can produce content faster. So some of the things that I'll be purchasing with those funds will just allow me to make it so that, you know, this will be permanently set up so I can just come in, start recording, and make a video immediately. You know what I mean? So That's sort of the goal with that. But thanks for having me on, man. I really do. I appreciate. I love these chats. And we actually just another a little plug here. We just recorded something for Kyburn that's going to be up on my channel. I think maybe we'll say by Sunday, but you guys have that to look forward to.
Excellent. Yeah. So generally, whenever I have Mark on this channel, it probably means I've done something on his channel as well, because we just find it easier to do two things at once. So please do check out his channel. I only ever have people on my channel that I think are good. So please do check out his channel. And incidentally, I know I always say this channel doesn't do leaks, and I hold by that. That's not what this channel is about. We don't do set leaks. We don't do any of the kind of the plot leaks or the set photos or anything like that. Mark, slightly more liberal, it has to be said. So if you want to go and find out some of those set leaks, just go and have a check out on his channel, because he does a really good job with that. But we're going to move on now to the second half of this, which is looking at Robert Baratheon as king. So we've looked at him in his youth, and now we're looking at him as king. And I want to start with Colleen, who's one of my patrons. Hi, Colleen, if you're there, who asked the simple question, why Robert Baratheon? He wasn't a very good choice as king. It seems like things went from bad to slightly less bad. He had no interest in governing. Do you think that the Tullys, Arryns, and Starks regretted their decision to support Robert? So, Mark, I'm going to put it to you. Why, first of all, was he made king? And do you think that the other main families regretted that decision?
Maybe not immediately, but I think, if they're not complete out of touch with reality, obviously they regret it somewhat. And like you said, I think you explained it best of why Robert was a king, was like, who would have taken it? Jon Arryn didn't want it. Ned didn't want it. So naturally Robert, I think, and maybe you can sort of refresh me a little bit. Was it even an option for Tywin to take the crown at that time? Like, did someone even perhaps maybe? I mean, he's the one with the most experience. He served as hand of the king under the Mad King for 20 some years, and when the time may be off, but he over a decade, and while he did it, the kingdom prospered. Like he built roads, he made taxes so that it would help pay for the poor. And I love sharing this story. Tywin is not the best person, but he did do a few good things, and some of those good things are highlighted in the World of Ice and Fire. But it's mentioned that there was this baker who was selling bread that he was using like sawdust in the bread to make it more voluminous, and it was making the people sick. So Tywin actually shut this down, and but I don't know. I guess they did regret it, and the reason why he took it is because the other two people that were an option, Jon Arryn and Ned, didn't want it. And I think you made a really good point of saying that earlier. But my reverse question to you is, do you think it was an option of Tywin to take the crown? Like, what was going on there? Because Jaime and Cersei were of age. You know what I mean? So it's not like he didn't have anyone else to take. So obviously Jaime was made Kingsguard, so that kind of knocked him out. And then he did set her up with it. Maybe he just didn't want to do it because, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think that I think I said this a moment ago. I think that he was made king because he was the last man standing, and I think that he had a link to the crown. I think that was why Ned didn't want to be king. Jon Arryn didn't want to be king. So I think that Robert Baratheon was the last man standing. Tywin, I don't think he actually had the power. And this seems like quite a bizarre thing to say, given that they were probably the big winners from this. But because Tywin held the Lannisters back for so long, we had this huge alliance we had the Baratheons, we had the Starks, we had the Tullys, and we had the Arryns. We had four noble houses who were all pushing down south, and Tywin kept the Lannisters out for so long, and it was only once he knew who was going to win that he came and got involved, and that meant that he did not have the say on who was going to be king at the end. So that is why I think Tywin did not become king, because there were 4 noble houses against him, and I think he realized that that was not going to happen. So did they regret it? Well, perhaps, but at the same time, I think Ned Stark in the North didn't really pay huge amounts of attention. I think they just like went, well, we're up in the North, we're doing our thing, just whatever's going on down there. In the Vale of Arryn, ditto, actually. It's very similar over in the Vale of Arryn. They've got this huge mountain range. They just do their own thing. In the Riverlands, then, yeah, well, maybe they noticed that the country was going slightly bankrupt, but they didn't have the Mad King anymore, so they probably didn't care that much. So did they regret it? Actually, probably not. In time, they probably would have done, but right then, they probably didn't. I just want to quickly go across to the chat, because we had a couple of super chats. First of all, from John St. Baptiste, who just says, the well-told tale is crack for your ears. Check it. Thank you so much. That's very kind. And Klaus Richter, yes, this is the right time to remind me of your super chat, which has fallen off of my my feed. But the question that you asked was about Robert and his children. And the question is, was he just stupid? Did he not realize what was going on, like, right in front of his eyes? Did he not know, these aren't his children? What do you think was actually going on there? Was he stupid, or was there something else happening?
I mean, the easiest answer to that is yes, he was just that dumb and, drunk all the time that it didn't really dawn on him that, maybe all of my kids maybe shouldn't have blonde hair. Maybe at least one of them has like sandy brown or something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That's the easiest choice. Another one could be that he just didn't care because he didn't love Cersei anyway. So it's almost like, but then again, he's the king and his pride is very easily wounded. So the only reasonable defense is that he just didn't know. He was just that drunk all the time. And he's like, every single one of these kids has got blonde hair, but man, whatever. You know what I mean? I feel like the fact that he didn't know how Joffrey turned out, and Joffrey was already a sadistic SOB before he died. The fact that he didn't know how Joffrey was and didn't go and make him go get whipped. He says to him, I wish I could have spent more time with you on his deathbed. But like the fact that he was able to go that far with, it's the only reasonable option is that he just was not paying attention. And it was a combination of him dealing with addiction of drinking. I guess you can't really say that because everyone drank a lot back then, but it's not real medieval. So we don't know. Maybe they are just alcoholics and they can find good water and they know that drinking all the time is bad for you. So I don't know. I mean, he's the only reasonable answer to that is that he just doesn't know. He just didn't figure it out.
Yeah. So the answer that the book seem to have is that Cersei just got him very drunk a lot of the time, and so actually this is not so much just Robert's addictions. Yes, they were his own addictions, but Cersei was playing into it to allow her to have her affair with Jaime, and he was probably okay with turning the blind eye. That's probably the wrong way of saying it. He probably didn't think about it because he had other things on his mind. He got his heirs and that was all he cared about. He assumed that they were his. Why wouldn't he think that they were his? So was he stupid? Well, yes, perhaps, in the extent that he didn't understand what was actually happening. But also, I think we have to accept the fact that his skill was as a conqueror, not as a ruler. And I think this brings us on to another question from my patron. One of my patrons, Brian Price, says, despite the obvious criticisms of Robert B., which we've come through, despite these criticisms, he managed to maintain power and some degree of peace for several decades. And we shouldn't overlook this. There were a lot of wars in the preceding decades that there was only one rebellion, Greyjoy Rebellion, during his time.
Yeah, the Nine Penny Kings. No, that wasn't it. Never mind. Don't listen to me. I don't know what I'm talking about.
You know so much, but there were, prior to this, there were a lot of rebellions, and then there was only one small rebellion during Robert Baratheon's time. Is there anything redeeming to say about his governing strategy? Perhaps that he utilized competent supervisors or advisors, and that he had a read on the power struggles. Is there anything that you can say that is actually redeeming about his role as king?
All right, I'm muted again. Awesome. I mean, he was, I guess he did still have somewhat military prowess. Like, he did take a part in helping win the rebellion that did happen. I'm a big fan of the idea that Westeros was the shape that it's put in now was put in by the Targaryens, and they're sort of the only people that can bring, the Seven Kingdoms out of what they're in right now. And one of those ways that they do it is by using dragons, which can just be a metaphor for power. So they're uniters. And I think the history of Targaryen rulers as of recent, you had the Mad King, then you had Robert, then you had Tommen, then you had Joffrey, then you had Tommen, Joffrey, obviously a piece of crap. Robert, not the best. The Mad King, obviously a piece of crap. And then now you have Cersei. So the history of I mean, I guess you can say that it's been a little bit better since the Targaryens haven't been sitting the throne. But I mean, as far as one redeeming quality, he caused the War of the Five Kings. His death caused the War of the Five Kings, which ultimately brought Daenerys and Jon Snow together.
Okay, I mean, well, I will try. I think perhaps slightly harder. No offense. I will try slightly harder at getting a defense of Robert Baratheon here. What he did, I think, which was good, was look at the people around him when he became king and decide who he should forgive and who he should not. And he looked at the King's Guard, and he decided, actually, you know what? Most of them have gone, but Barristan Selmy, I'll keep him. He saw who he was as a person. He saw that he would be loyal to him. And he looked around the small council and said, actually, you know what? Varys, yes, he's quite a slimy character, but I'm going to keep him. Littlefinger, he perhaps underestimated, but Littlefinger did keep the show on the road. Robert Baratheon spent huge amounts of money. Littlefinger did indeed make sure that money was available. So he made sure that he kept people on the right side of him. When he became king, he wedded Cersei because he knew that the Lannisters were, out of all the families, the most powerful family, and he had to keep them on side, so he married Cersei. He didn't love Cersei. He married her because he knew that was necessary. So it's not a defense, but my position on what he did well is that he accepted what the issues were when he became king, and he said, okay, that one, I'm just going to allow that one to carry on rumbling along. This one I'm going to deal with by doing that. And he set in place the set of advisors and key people around him that would allow him to be king for a decade, maybe a couple of decades even. What do you think about that?
I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I feel like it's almost like we're trying to play opposites. You can't deep down sit here and tell me that Robert had any redeeming. He just didn't. I just don't know. I feel like you could argue that the people around him are what made him go into handling those decisions. Like you said, he kept the wisest and the strongest with Barristan around him, and those people just sort of continued on that tradition. He's good at being complicit, so he's like, yeah, okay, I'll marry her. I know these kids aren't mine, but I'm not gonna do nothing. But you know what I mean? Like I don't even know. And I guess you could say that the little decisions that he did made that you mentioned that were good for the kingdom, which were basically marrying Cersei, he only did that because he knew he had messed up so much in like accepting the role of the king. Like, I think the one good thing that he did, and I'm sorry, I'm going back because I said he didn't do anything good. I think the one good deed that he did was bring attention to the wrongs that were going on in the kingdom and trying to actually do something about it instead of just accepting it and accepting that these inbred Targaryens are where they. So he's a revolutionist. So yeah, that's one thing that he did, was he tried to do something about it. Whereas Rhaegar was arguably trying to do the same thing in a more less bloodshed type of way, but he did see that there was all of this atrocities being committed in his home world, whatever, in Westeros, and he wanted to do something about it. So I'll give him that. But I feel like it's just a stretch to sit here and say, like, well, he married Cersei and he didn't have to. Cersei was attractive. He was a horn dog. I would marry her all day, even if I don't love her. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I feel like he's just good at being a someone who, I mean, I don't know. It's just hard. I'm struggling for. Yeah, I'll pass it back off to you, Robert.
Okay, well, let's go straight to the. We've had a lot of super chats, so let's go to them. First of all, Kay Jackson, thank you so much. $20, that's very kind. Saying thanks for your research. It makes us smarter. That's very kind of you to say. James with a super chat saying, I'm at work, so I can't watch, but wanted to catch you while you were live to give you this. Thanks for the amazing content, Robert and Sir Hunts. You are very welcome. Kelly Lausman saying, love you both, with a big, fat, wet kiss for us both. So there you go, Mark. You get a big kiss there from Kelly. Do you think there's a connection between the cold water in the pool by the Weirwood in Winterfell and the cold of the crypts? We're going slightly off tangent, but I think I've got a couple of questions which are going off of this topic. So let's start here. Moving away from Robert Baratheon, we're going to go with Kelly's question. Do you think there's a connection between the cold water in the pool by the Weirwood in Winterfell and the cold of the crypts? Mark, take it away.
If the water's being sourced from down there, then yes. As far as like the mystical properties, where it's like, you know, Bran's had a few visions by there, sure, it could be like a little bit of foreshadowing that the Night King is coming, and maybe in the books he wants to go to the Crypts of Winterfell because something's down there. There's a small chance of it happening on the TV show. I will say that it's a bit odd that almost every season of this show they've shown it, and whether it's with Ned and Robert down there, whether it's with Sansa and Littlefinger, Jon and Littlefinger, Arya and Sansa meeting down there, they keep going down there for a reason. So, you know, that's obviously not a thing on the TV show. So in the books, it could be a little bit of subtle, not so subtle foreshadowing to that the Night King has something and some greater purpose down there.
Yeah, so I've got lots of videos on this one. Check them out. I think the most recent one is called The Horn of Winter and the Crypts of Winterfell. Check it out. My view is that underneath Winterfell there are hot springs, and yet from the Crypts of Winterfell we always hear about the cold air coming forth. Now that, I think, has to be connected to the water. There are hot springs bubbling up all over Winterfell except for this pool in front of the Weirwood tree, which is cold, and the wind which is coming up from the crypts, which are cold. There is undoubtedly something going on in the crypts which is cold. Now, I've gone into on a number of videos what I think is going on down there, but yes, I think there is a connection. I think that the fact that this is cold at the first level is about the fact that we should think about this as being quite ghostly. We should think about this as being the ancient Starks still remaining there. Every time in the books people go down there, it's almost as if they're alive. The Starks, the ancient Starks, are not dead. They're going to come back. I'm convinced of it in the books. I think on the show, probably not, actually. I think they're going to just leave that alone. I know, Mark, you said that they're always down in the crypts. I think that's just because they've got the set there, to be honest. I don't think it's because that they're going to use it. I think that that's a book thing, not a show thing. But yes, in answer to that question, is there a connection between cold water by the pool in the Weirwood and the cold of the crypts? Yes, because the crypts, I believe, are surrounded by the roots of the Weirwood. They're right underneath it, and that's what's going on there. They're keeping that bit cool while the rest of Winterfell is kept warm by these hot springs going on.
Maybe it's sorry, just adding in a little bit here. Maybe it just has something to do with it. The many face gods of the north, the many unknown named rather. Maybe one of them is the Great Other. Maybe they all are the Great Other, just different aspects of them. And maybe the fact that the Weirwood tree is linked so deeply to northern religion, maybe that's sort of like subtle, like what you were saying, tying it all together.
Yeah, I think I agree. So my take on the Great Other is that the Great Other isn't as a misunderstanding from the religion of the Lord of Light. I think that the Great Other is actually the children of the forest and the old gods. So I think that is what is going on. Again, I've done a video on this. I think there's a lot of history going on there, and what we're dealing with is ancient history that people have misunderstood and misinterpreted, and has got handed down from story to story before it got written down for millennia, and that is what is going on there. But let's go on to another super chat. We've got one from Kid28. $10. Thank you very much. That's very kind. Saying sorry to go off topic. Not a problem at all. We seem to be going off topic now. So, guys, incidentally, if you've got any other super chats or questions off topic, then that's where we're at now. Go with that. I would like to hear both of your thoughts on whether or not Jaime completes his turn on Cersei by telling Jon and Dany about her plans to betray them. I'll pick up on this, and then Mark, if you want to answer it afterwards. I think yes. I think that he will, when he gets north, he will tell people that yes, she has betrayed them. I think that's what's going to go on. I think that so much of the first episode, maybe even 2 episodes of season 8, is going to be about the iteration of people arriving. Who arrives when? Will Jon and Dany arrive, and then we get Bran and Sam telling them what's going on? When will Jaime arrive? Is Jaime going to pick up an army when he goes with him? He's going to pick up Bronn when he goes with him. The army, incidentally, I think might be the Lannister army, which is in the Riverlands. So in any event, I think when Jaime gets north, he will let them know that Cersei is going to betray them. But what do you think, Mark? Do you think that Jaime is going to betray Cersei, as it were, by saying that?
Ooh, I've got to tread extremely carefully here because, like you had mentioned earlier, plot leaks. All of you all, if you want to find out, and here's the thing too. Nothing's been extremely reliable, so it's all to be taken with half a grain of salt. But if you want to know some good fan fiction or plot leak, as we call it, go check those out on my channel. There's 3 of them up there right now. But I have to, giving based on what we're given in season 7, Jaime's already betrayed Cersei by leaving her. She's like, I told them this, I'm going to do that. Jaime's like, no, we need to go and help them. You saw that. That's the threat of the dead. They're coming for us all. And Cersei chose not to do that. She said, I'd rather have the Night King wipe them all out. You know what I mean? I think the conversation between him and Cersei is extremely important because she says, Cersei says to Jaime, didn't she have 3 dragons? One of them wasn't there. We only saw 2 of them. So obviously one of them's been killed. And he's like, we don't know. She could have it off flying over the ocean or whatever, you know what I mean? Or sitting guarding the ships, whatever. So I think it's important, that conversation, if you have any doubt in what Jaime will do next season, go back and rewatch that. It's in episode 7 and it's like literally the last 10 minutes. Jaime has already betrayed Cersei and he will continue to betray Cersei in season 8.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think that in the books, his character arc has not finished because he needs to end up with Cersei. On the show, I think they've done that final confrontation now. I think that that's actually what's happened when we saw the 2 of them and Jaime walked away. I think that was it. now Jaime's character arc ends with Brienne, I think, on the show. But in the books, yes, I think that it has to round off again with Jaime. And will he tell people that Cersei's betrayed them? Yes, I think that is, in any way, I think that is what he's about to do. I think that is the Tyrion may suspect it and he may advise it, but the way that they will learn that is the case is through Cersei. Klaus Richter, thank you so much. €10 saying, I don't buy your explanation. I don't know whether that's my explanation or yours, Mark. Robert was too drunk to recognize his heirs. Really? I think Robert knew who his heirs were. He was drunk a lot of the time. Let's be honest about that. But I think that he recognized who his children were. The fact is that they were blonde children. His wife was blonde. I suspect that he didn't know. He might have suspected that there was something going on, but he didn't know. And I think that psychologically, he probably allowed himself not to know, if that makes sense. So did he know they weren't his children? I don't think if you'd asked him, he would probably said, yes, of course, those are my children. But perhaps somewhere deep inside, he suspected that they weren't. What do you think, Mark?
I mean, I think, following your rationale, we could give him a little bit more credit than what he's shown. Maybe, he realizes that they aren't his children. He's also got all of these bastards all over the place. But if he were to bring that up to Cersei, he knows that situation well enough that just means that all of the Lannister funding will be pulled from the crown. He now has no heirs, has to find a new wife, and it's going to cause all this extra drama. And he just wants to get drunk all day and have sex with random women. You know what I'm saying? So I think it could just be parts of it is that he suspected something was up, but knew that even if it was, true, that it would cause all of this turmoil and strife that he didn't want to have to deal with. When he knew that his line would carry on through his bastards, he didn't really want to be king. Maybe he thought that his children didn't deserve to be king, and that's why he just let the land. I don't know. He could have had some internal motivation as to why, and we just don't know yet. Maybe we'll find out. We'll get something in Wins a Winner or something. But commenting back to what you were saying about Jaime, one thing, and I know it's going back on out of topic, but just quickly following with his fate. Remember, he's been called a Kingslayer by Robert. He's been called that's just what he's known for, is killing the king, right? So you could even say that he continued that with Bran, because the way that it was headed, Robb never had a POV chapter, so we knew he was going to die. That left technically in Rickon being younger than Bran. Bran was next in line. When Jaime pushed Bran out of the window, he killed another king. So that's his second king. And you could say that there's heavy theories that he's going to kill Cersei. That could be the third king or ruler, so to speak. And then I don't know.
Yeah. So my take on Jaime is that in the books, his character arc takes him round to being Queenslayer, and I think that is what it is. And I think that there's going to be some kind of parallelism between when he was with Aerys II and he was trying to burn the city to the ground, and where Cersei is going to be, and she was trying to burn the city to the ground. And I think that he is going to, in both situations, save the day. And I think that finally he is going to get, the recognition for doing the right thing. So I think that is his arc. His character arc is going to take him towards being Queenslayer. I don't know whether that's going to be the case on the show, but I think that's what's going to happen in the books. Let's go back to the chat. Talking Joe saying $9.99. Thank you so much. My two favorite YouTubers. Thank you. That's very kind. Keep up the good content, guys. You make this long night so much better. Question: do you think that Gendry will save the Baratheon name? What do you reckon, Mark? Is Gendry the future?
For sure. If the Baratheons are ever going to be united with the Starks, it's going to be through Gendry. I think Daenerys, Jon, there's like 3 different, I guess Cersei, not that she would ever do it, but there's several different people who could legitimize Gendry. We don't really know what's going on in the Stormlands. I think it'd be interesting, and it would be nice if maybe the final battle took place that far south. I don't know, just to bring some more. What the hell just happened? Hello? Are you still there? Huh? You're muted.
Keep going. Don't worry.
Oh, I was like, yeah. But yeah, no, I think Gendry is the best hope for House Baratheon that it has. Obviously that's not the case for the books, but for the TV show, for sure. If they're going to do House Baratheon justice, if you want to even call it that, Gendry's the best option. He's now besties with Jon. Wait till Jon finds out that his dad killed his dad. That's going to be hilarious. Can't wait to find that out. But, I mean, yeah, I think we can see some of Robert in Gendry, and maybe even more nobility, more honorable traits in Gendry than maybe he can correct some of the things that his father did wrong. I don't think it's going to happen. There's no way that it would happen, but I wouldn't be completely upset if Gendry sat the Iron Throne in the end. Like, he'd be almost like a Jon, you know what I mean? Except for less jaded as Jon, because Jon, when he becomes a ruler, is going to become somewhat prejudiced towards maybe even wanting to move the capital to the north if he becomes king, because all he really cares about is the north. Gendry would be less like that and be more neutral. And also he knows King's Landing the best. He's pretty much grown up there. You know what I mean? So
yeah, so I think there are a couple of opportunities here for Gendry to be recognized as a proper Baratheon. Will he? I don't know. Either in the books. I mean, in the books, there's Gendry is 2 characters. He's both Gendry and Edric Storm. So he's been kind of mashed together on the show. So I think there's a chance on the show. In fact, I think it's quite likely on the show that he will survive and he will take forward the Baratheon name. That, for me, is quite a Disney ending. I don't like it. I like Gendry as a character, but it just seems quite nice and easy for him to just take on the Baratheon name. He should be a good guy, and that is why I hope he survives. But at the same time, yeah, I don't know. Bittersweet seems to suggest we shouldn't expect everything to be perfect at the end of it. I've got a question here again as we're heading away from Robert Baratheon, from one of my patrons, Cornelia. Good to see you. Saying, as we know, the Hound. We're going to move on to the Hound here. The Hound despises all kings, lords, and knights. Do you think he respects Jon Snow? And do you think we'll see some interaction between the Hound and Jon Snow in season 8? What do you think, Mark?
Well, I mean, yes, there's too perfect up an opportunity to have someone the size of him, and then Jon Snow being a tiny fuka, as he would put it. So, I think he'll respect Jon when he finds out that Jon, I mean, he already sort of does. Like he went with Jon north of the wall. So it's almost like, will we see more of that? Yes. I think Sandor puts on this rough exterior, but like with Brienne, when they fought and nearly killed each other, that was all broken. You remember they had conversations about Arya when they were going to the Dragon Pit. So, Sandor puts on a tough front, just like he did with the Brotherhood without banners, but you can tell that he cared when Thoros died in season 7. You could see it on his face. He's like, damn, you know what I mean? So it would only be natural for that same thing to happen with Jon. Maybe he'll be one of the ones who witness, let's say if something crazy happens, which it would be continuing on with the theme of it if Jon dies. You know what I mean? Like maybe he'll see that and be like, this dude, and then just want to do whatever he can to sort of like make sure that whatever Jon's plan was will continue on with. I definitely think for sure he's going to respect him.
Yeah, I agree. So Sandor will have a lot of interaction, in my view, with Jon in season 8. The two of them are going to be at the forefront of the battle against the Night King. In my view, that's what they're about. The Sandor's character arc takes him ultimately back towards the mountain, but in the short term, it has to take him towards fire, and that fire is what is going to help him against the whites. And Jon has to also be at the forefront of this battle. So I could see them as being almost brothers in arms. I can see a group of people all fighting against the White Walkers, and those are two of the central characters. And yes, he will respect him because Jon is actually one of those people without any pretensions. Jon is there, whether you like him or don't like him, he's quite earnest, you have to admit. And that's the kind of person that the Hound will respect, somebody who knows what he's about and knows what he's trying to achieve and doesn't have any pretense about it. So I think, yeah, the two of them will get on and the Hound will respect him.
If possible, could I add something on to that?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, yeah. So like, as far as like just random mention here, but I watch this channel called Overly Sarcastic Explanations, kind of, and I really love Red's videos, and she explains about the different tropes in writing. One of them is the 5 heroes, like the band of, you know, whatever. Sandor fits so many different roles in that it's almost impossible to not have an in-game situation in which he will be in that. You know, he could play as the tank, the warrior, even the knowledgeable one, because he's intelligent. You know what I mean? So it's like there's no way that we're not going to see him and Jon in some major final phase. Like there's no way. It's just I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So Sandor is a hero in a non-classical sense. What he is the person who is overcoming his own demons, his own problems, and he is facing up against the real enemy. And that is what he is about. And that is, I talk about character arcs a lot, but that is where he's coming to, is that he has to realize it's not just about him and his struggles, about fire and his family and his childhood. It's about a bigger battle, and that is where he is going to end up facing off against it. And that makes him a hero in a sense, because he is someone who can actually subsume himself into this greater battle against an evil that is threatening not just him, but many, many people. I just want to go across to the chat again. Alison Mootlu, so thank you so much. $5 saying, I liked King Robert. Perhaps he would have been a really great Kingsguard if Lord Arryn became king. Sir Hunts, I love the video with you and LML. Just taking the first bit of that about if Jon Arryn became king, would he have been a good Kingsguard? Yeah, I see what you're saying. He would have been a great warrior. I don't think that he would have really been very good with the chastity thing with the Kingsguard. That's not really where his strength lies. Let's put it that way. So I think, yes, he was a great fighter. Perhaps he would have been a reasonable leader of House Baratheon, but I don't think he would have made a great Kingsguard. Do you disagree with that?
No, I agree with that 100%. He can't keep it in his pants. So not only that, that means that he can't hold any lands, any titles, you know. So it's like, what he would. There's no way. I think that maybe if Jon Arryn decided that he wanted to do that, Robert would see that that's out of character for him, and he's like, okay, maybe I'll change too. But no, ultimately, no. He's destined to grow up to be a booze hound. And I saw people telling me in the chat earlier that I'm giving him a hard time. No, like I said, I love Robert Baratheon. But the fact of what got me triggered was when Robert, Mr. In Deep Geek, tried to compare him to Daenerys, because they're just not on the same freaking wavelength. But no, I mean, he's a booze hound. Like, he did some good things, but he also did some bad things. Just like every character in this story, literally every single one is conflicted. And, you know, like you were saying, like, it was Sandor, he doesn't just fit one. Robert doesn't just fit one either. He's got so many different sides to his trait. And I think it would have been awesome if we got, I mean, we sort of do, but maybe we learn more about what happened during that. So maybe if one of these spinoff shows focuses more, and I know they already said they're not going to do it, but I'm just saying if they did, maybe seeing more, I think that would be a perfect movie. Like, do you think this is on topic with it? Do you think Robert's Rebellion would have been like an epic movie, like maybe like an hour and a half long? Not obviously not the same actors, but still connected to HBO. That would, I think that would be perfect. Even if they did like an anime of it.
I mean, I'd love that. I think a mini series. To be honest, I don't think they could have done it in just one movie. I think that if you gave it 4, 5, 6 episodes, I think that would have been perfect for it. But I get why they're doing the ancient history stuff. I understand that. It's just like they're going to try and move it completely away from the story that we know. We had a super chat from Kids28 saying, just bumping at Raven Selex's question. I can't see that at the moment, but guys, I love it. I've said this almost every time. I love it when people spot a question somebody else has done and then super chat it just to bring it to our attention, because there are so many questions and so many comments going by. Seriously, we can't keep up with them all. So when somebody super chats just to bring our attention to something else, that's amazing. Mark, could I just prevail upon you to just have a quick flick back and see whether you can see what that question is so we can answer that one? And while you're doing that, we did have another super chat, which was from Catherine Bassett with £5, which is proper English money, and it's way past your bedtime, I'm sure, Catherine. It's way past my bedtime. Saying, do you think all the big houses' names will die out? Will the bastard names take over? That's a great question. I think on the show, a lot of the great house names will die out. In the books, what you find is that there are so many extra characters. So we look at House, I don't know, Targaryen, for example, and we think, okay, the characters that we know are Tywin, there was Kevin Lannister, and then there were the 3 children. When they're all gone, who else is there? No one. But in the books, there are cousins and there are many, many other characters. And the way that world worked was that whoever was the next in line would inherit. So there will be an inheritor to House Baratheon and House Tyrell and all the other houses that we think on the show have disappeared. So in the books, I think there are other characters who will take those on. But the big question, taking a step back from that, is what is the system going to be when all this has happened? Personally, I don't think there's going to be an Iron Throne. I think that's going to go. Maybe there will be lots of, each of the different regions are going to have their own leaders, and maybe they'll form some sort of council. I don't know. But some houses probably on the show will disappear. I think it's way too late to try and introduce a new Tyrell, for example. I think in Dawn, yes, they might introduce hi, I'm the new Dawn leader, but it's way too late to introduce a new major Dawn character. House Baratheon, the same. It's too late to introduce a new House Baratheon leader. It's either going to be Gendry or no one. So in answer to that question, do I think that they're going to end in the books? Probably no. There will definitely be claimants to all of those big houses. On the show, it's too late to introduce new people. So they either will glaze over it, which they may well do, or they will just say, that's not the issue now. The issue now is the governance of it all, and just forget about it. So, Mark, what do you think about that issue, about whether or not some of these big houses are gone? And did you manage to find that other super chat that we're looking for?
Was it a super chat or was it a question in the chat? Because I found the super chat that said the question was from from Raven Salix. And it was basically, Jaime does everything he does for love. He'll kill Cersei to defend someone he loves, Brienne. I think that's the one they were talking about. Yep.
Let's go with that one.
Okay. And what was it in response to? We're saying that Jaime doesn't do stuff for love. I don't remember mentioning that. Did that probably relates to another question?
Well, why don't you quickly pick on this other one, Catherine Bassett, about do you think that the big houses will end? We've got a number of houses like House Tyrell, like House Martell down in Dawn, House Baratheon. Do you think they're gone now on the show? Do you think that there will be other people, perhaps the bastards, taking over them?
I mean, that's hard to say because, like, isn't the biggest inspiration for the story the War of the Roses? And what kind of happened with that? One family mainly took power, but you still had these other houses who were related to them somehow. So it's almost like if there's a king that sits the Iron Throne, or if there's a queen, wink, wink, that sits the Iron Throne in the end, then maybe there'll be a need to have some higher up houses. I think the main goal in what the showrunners, Dan and Dave, are trying to put off in their version of George's story. And that's one thing you have to remember. They're two separate entities. I'm not saying you in particular. I'm just saying just in general, is that they're trying to show that these houses are pretty much at their near end. House Stark is pretty much destroyed unless Sansa takes a husband. And even if she takes a husband, she would take his last name. So there's not going to be anyone for House Stark. Jon isn't even a Stark. You know what I mean? Same with Daenerys, last of House Targaryen, Cersei, last of, Jaime too, and Tyrion. But it's the last of all of these big houses. And I think what the show's trying to do is destroy all of them at the end. I would love to see, and I know we've mentioned this in probably all of our collabs, but I would love to see like a governing body of people who represent certain areas coming together as sort of like basically what the small council is to the king, but to the entirety of the nation. So you have these people that sit on this governing body, and there's no one direct person who can, make all the rules if they wanted to. I think that's what the kind of end that we're headed to for the TV show.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Guys, I'm going to wrap up in about 10 minutes. So if you've got any more questions, any more super chats, now is the time to drop them in. I think the question that we were talking about earlier from Raven Salix is about Jaime does everything he does for love, and that's a statement. So he will kill Cersei to defend someone he loves. Is that Brienne? So the question, I think, is Jaime, who does everything he does for love, going to die to protect Brienne?
For sure. I mean, I don't know if you could say that that'll be the reason why he dies. Are we talking more for books or for show? Like,
let's go with show, because I think in the books, I'm still holding for him going with the Cersei route. But let's go with the show.
I mean, it depends, because like when you imply something like, is he going to die for her? She can't defend herself. You know what I mean? Which she's more than capable of. She's a better warrior than Jaime. So it's almost like, well, I can flip it around. Will Brienne die for Jaime, saving him? And honestly, I think a safe guess would be yes. I think they've never really had a moment where they 100% tell each other how they feel, but looks can say everything. And when there's that strong of a physical attraction between two people, you kind of know something's up. The same way it is with me and Emilia Clarke. Every time I see her, I might not say hi to her, but she knows what's up. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, it's like,
yeah, she said the same to me, actually.
Whoa, dude. Whoa.
About you, buddy. Calm down.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, there we go. Thanks for massaging the ego there. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to answer that question because I can't see a situation in which Jaime would have to die to save her. I could see more so an opposite situation where Jaime's at his wit's end and Brienne has to do something to save him so that he can escape. But yes, I do think that, it's safe to assume that they would die for each other. I think they need some sort of moment where they're like, look, I love you, right? You know what I mean? They kind of had that. I think it was season 4, when they're taking a bath after Jaime saves her from being raped, and they're like cleaning themselves. It's like, that's Jaime. She holds, like, Jaime does something where he pretends to fall and she captures him, and then she's holding him in his arms like that. They need another moment like that, but with all bullshit taken aside. Technically Jaime's single, so he doesn't have, I think the fact that he knew Cersei was willing to kill him because he was going against what she said, even though he was going with what she said, he just wasn't going with her betrayal. Technically, that's when all of his love died for her. And I think maybe we'll see early on in this next season, they'll intentionally include some scenes to show that he's over her. Like in the books, you know, he receives that letter from her and he tosses it in the fire. Maybe we'll get something like that, and then it'll be confirmed. And then when he does see Brienne, if they make it to each other, they'll have that conclusion. I don't know. I think they need to, no doubt they would die for each other, but they still need those few more moments to sort of explain it, because they've never actually said it out loud, but you know, they don't necessarily need to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be quite beautiful if they do get that moment to say that to each other. I wonder whether the show is going to tease us so they do not ever get that moment, and that would be quite hard, but it feels like the kind of thing that they might do. Going to the super chats, Jared McKinnon, thank you so much. Just saying, late to the party, just wanted to send some love. Thank you, that's very kind. We're going to wrap up in a moment, guys. Mark, do you want to have a quick flick through to see if there's any final questions that we want to just pick up on before all of this? Guys, while Mark's doing that, I just wanted to say again, thank you to my patrons. If you want to support this channel, if you want to get access to more of my material, please do check out my Patreon page. It's patreon.com/InDeepGeek. There's a link down there in the description. There's probably one in the super chat as well. Probably one of the moderators will pop it in there. And also my second channel, which is called The Well Told Tale. We're now 4 episodes in. We're about halfway through The War of the Worlds. It's just an audio narration channel, me narrating some of the best science fiction, fantasy, speculative fiction stories ever written. And I've tried to frame this so that in the episode, it's not going to be interrupted by adverts. There might be adverts before and after. I don't know. That's the way it works. But during the episode, I guarantee there will be no adverts. So it's the first few episodes, I've been averaging about 3/4 of an hour. So if you just want to have a long period of just listening to a great story, please check out The Well Told Tale. Mark, are there any final questions you think it would be really good for us to pick up on?
Yes, we have one from Tax Tactus, and this one relates to Robert, sort of. Cersei, Gendry's mother. Could it be possible?
Oh, I mean, it's possible, but I don't think so. I mean, just think about the logistics of this. So, if we're saying that Cersei is Gendry's mother, what we're saying is that Robert Baratheon and Cersei had a baby. So she became pregnant, obviously pregnant, 9 months pregnant, has a baby. He doesn't notice the fact that she's 9 months pregnant and she has a baby. And then she decides, you know what? I'm just going to give this to the brothel. I'm going to give this over to this random woman I've never met, and I'm going to let that baby survive. That, for me, doesn't sound right on any level, because Cersei seems to have been proactively trying to make sure that she has no children by Robert Baratheon. Now, if she has that child, would she have let that child survive? I don't think so. It doesn't make any sense to me on any of these kind of levels. Would Robert Baratheon have noticed that his wife was 9 months pregnant? Of course he would. Would he have checked what happened to that baby? Of course he would. So I don't think, for myself, I don't think that that's at all likely, just in terms of logistics.
And I actually am going to refrain from answering that question, because I have a video that will be out next week discussing that, and it includes some spoilers. So that's all I'm going to say for that. But yeah, and then I think, you know, we had one more question. This one was a really good one. I like this one. This one's from in the chat. It is from Robin's Food. Sorry if I messed that up. But they said, which part of the war with the Night King would Robert Baratheon play if he survived the series? I like that one. I think he would have been, clearly a battle commander. Like, I don't know. I would be going back on what I said earlier, which was would he do the same thing Daenerys is doing, lay down conquest in order to save the land he's trying to conquer? And obviously, no, I don't think he would. But if he were to survive this long, I don't even know if it would get to the point where the Night King would have come down south, because he wouldn't have been as neglectful as the North as the Lannisters are. So he would have been paying more attention. He would have listened to, I think it was Aemon and Gior, who sent down the undead hand to and told them they need reinforcements to the wall because there are these undead creatures that are doing. I think Robert would have definitely done that, and that would have been his role. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I just want to very quickly pick up on Wiz the Smith saying Maggie the Frog's prophecy says 3 children. So I think that's the other thing about Cersei, as I don't think she was going to have more children than that. I don't think that she has got any bastard children. I don't think Gendry is her child. But in terms of Robert Baratheon and the Army of the Dead, yeah, so if he had survived, I think Ned would also have survived, because he would not have ordered Ned's death. And I think he would have taken Ned's advice, and Ned would have taken the advice of whoever was at the wall. And so Robert would have paid attention a lot earlier than Cersei would have done. So I think that what we're looking at is actually a slightly more proactive approach from the lands of the living than what we saw. So yeah, he would have led the fight. He wasn't as great a warrior at the end of his days that he was at the beginning of his days, but yeah, he would have led the fight, and he would have been right up there at the wall fighting against them. That's my view. Guys, I'm going to start bringing this to a close now. Mark, do you want to tell people, if they're looking for Sir Hunt's reviews, where do they find you on the internet?
Oh, man. Oh, I went on a funny little tangent that I'll try to reiterate because I was muted. I keep clicking it and I don't realize it. I just go and I'm like, oh, it's my turn to talk. Yay. All right. But yeah, you can find me on YouTube over at Sir Hunt's Reviews. And that was it. Because if I say the joke now, it'll sound forced and I don't want to do it. So.
I think I speak for everyone in saying I'd love to hear that joke.
I was just gonna say, if you're looking for me, you can find me right here. It would have been a lot funnier if I had delivered it the same way, because it was like, I don't know, but yeah, that was it.
It's a classic. Okay, guys, I'd highly recommend you go and have a look at Mark's channel, Sir Hunt's Reviews. You can find him not just on YouTube, but he's also on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook probably as well. Do please check him out. As for me, if this is your first time checking me out, I'm also on all of those places as well. Also, please do check out my Patreon page, Deep Geek. Patreon.com/InDeepGeek. Guys, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for the super chats. Thank you so much for the chat. It's been a lot of fun looking at all of the questions and comments coming through there. Mark, thank you for coming on. And guys, I'm going to see you the same time next week on Thursday. And I've got a really good new YouTuber for you to be checking out. And so I'm really excited about this. Guys, thank you so much, and I will see you again next week.